Good morning. This is, hold on. Hold on. Please hold. I'm doing things a little bit different here today. And okay, so I am live on Facebook. I'm live on YouTube, on People's Press Media. I'm live on Twitter. Facebook and Twitter are both my, actually, Facebook is my personal Catherine Vitale account. Twitter is my Vitale for Boston account. And I'm live on Rumble, which I'm new to Rumble. So that's my People's Press Media account. And I'm trying something a little bit different today. I'm also live on Instagram for the first time ever. And I am live on TikTok. So I'm streaming on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different platforms. I've never been live on Instagram before, and I've never been live on TikTok before. So here I am. It's a little bit different for me. It's an adjustment, and I have 2 cameras on me. So sorry if I'm not looking directly at the camera for the platform that you're watching. But hold on. TikTok is very confusing. Okay. So I've done plenty of lives. I've had my little YouTube channel for a while, and I've been going live on Facebook and Twitter for a while now. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Catherine Vitale. I am a former candidate for Boston City Council. I ran last year and lost, came in last place out of 8. And but 8,500 people voted for me, so that's a big deal. I've been an activist for the past 3 years. I've been involved in local politics for 4 years, so I'm kind of new here, but I think a lot of us are in the political realm. And I am the state director for the Blexit, Massachusetts state chapter. So if you're in Massachusetts and you know of Blexit, it is the largest minority organization in the country. If you're interested in joining to be a volunteer of any sort or volume, let me know. On my social medias, though, I do post about Blexit sometimes, and I do talk about Blexit sometimes, but my views are my own, and I do have, my own things going on outside of Blexit. So some things that I say will have nothing to do at all with Blexit. So please do not reflect the things that I say to Blexit. And I am now also recently just got involved in the Boston for Trump campaign. So I'll be doing some work with that too. And along with Blexit, doing some voter registration drives and stuff like that. So why am I live? I do lives randomly, spontaneously. I think I'm going to post talk and on Instagram in addition to my other platforms, because there's many things to talk about all the time. As I said, I've been an activist for 3 years. That has come with a lot of learning and a lot of new experiences and a lot of networking. So I started my activism after working on a political campaign in 2020. When all of the COVID restrictions were happening, I was protesting mandates. And I know that on some platforms I can't say certain words. So I was protesting mandates and jab clinics and stuff like that. And then um, going into 2022, I was helping to advocate for Boston city workers when Boston Mayor Michelle Wu took office. And she had a very strict mandate. The like 33,000 Boston city workers no longer had the option of taking a COVID test to keep their job, like a weekly COVID test. They now had to get the jab or lose their job. So we started protesting her regularly in front of her house because she shut down City Hall for the first couple weeks of January, claiming that there was a spike in COVID cases. And the protesting in front of her house led to her and the Boston City Council passing an unconstitutional, unlawful, ridiculous, self-serving city ordinance to essentially ban us from protesting in front of her house. So what this does, it actually, a lot of people think that it has to do with the noise that we were making in front of her house. It has nothing to do with noise. The city already has a noise ordinance. You're not supposed to make excessive noise between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So when we were protesting, we would show up at about 7 a.m. and start making noise after 7 a.m. We never made any noise before 7 a.m. There was usually just like a small handful of us. And we would make noise out in front of her house until she left for work, and then we would leave. We never broke any laws. We never caused any problems. We were just there to be heard by our mayor, right? And she didn't like it. We were embarrassing her to the point of, it was making national news. People all over the country were talking about it, and she didn't like that. So we went there probably maybe like 1 to 3 times a week, if that, in the months of January and February of 20. And then on February 28th, she proposed this new city ordinance to basically reduce the number of hours of the already existing noise ordinance. But again, the picketing ordinance that she passed wasn't about noise. It's just that people think it's about noise, so it sounds like it's reasonable to them when it's a complete violation of the First Amendment. So what it is that between the hours of 9 p.m. and 9 a.m., which is conveniently the time that she's at work, so that she doesn't have to deal with it and she doesn't have to face the people who are critical of her, you cannot picket at a targeted residence. You cannot target a residence with picketing. So you don't have to make any noise. You don't even have to be holding a sign. You could just be standing in front of the residence and you could be cited with this ordinance. The problem with the ordinance is that it is a civil infraction and only calls for a fine of $50. And then if you violate a second time, you get a fine of $150. And if you violate a third time or any time after that, you get a fine of $300. However, instead of fining us, they just started arresting us. So I have been arrested in front of Michelle Wu's house for peacefully protesting. That case was dragged out. There were 4 of us arrested. 2 of us were charged with disturbing the peace, and they relentlessly prosecuted us for 2 years. And we just ended that case in July. We were pro se. We represented ourselves. We had no lawyer, and we had a jury trial, and we were found not guilty. And then I had 2 other arrests, one from the Massachusetts Department of Education and one from Boston City Hall. These are situations that, as my posting gets more consistent and I'm live on these new platforms that I'm going live on, I'll talk about these instances many times. Right now, I'm just bringing them up just to give like an overview of who I am, because I'm live on 6 different platforms right now, and there's a lot of people on here who don't know who I am. So I'm an activist. I do public demonstrations, direct action to shame the people in power, the people who have been elected to represent us and are not doing so, and to bring public awareness to what's happening in government, and more specifically local government, because that's the most important. And again, I ran for Boston City Council last year and plan to run again in the future. So, all that being said about me, the reason why I'm live today, as the title says on most of these platforms, the Department of Revenue and other corruption. Who follow me on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, they've already heard some stories from me and they already know some things about my life. So this is somewhat of a personal issue, but that's something that I do, is I like to bring my personal issues to social media, because if we don't talk about the things that we're going through, and if people don't hear about these things, then if and when the situation arises in their life, they're caught off guard, or they're dealing with it, having no knowledge of it. So anytime something happens to me, I like to talk about it. I like to tell people, what I think I did wrong, what I think I did right, what I think that we should do in these situations going forward, because you don't really know about how to handle a situation until you've been through it yourself. So I like to hear what other people go through, and I like to tell people about what I go through, so that we can all help each other navigate through this very corrupt world, right? So I am a single mom. I am a homeschooling mom. I have 2 small children, and I have had past history with DCF, which is in Massachusetts, the Department of Children and Families. And the rest of the country or world, you may know it as CPS or DSS, or it's called a different agency depending on what state or country you're in. But generally, Child Protective Services, right? So I've had a few cases with them. They did take my children back in 2018 for 5 months. Again, that's a different story for a different day. But I do have my children now. They did try to take them again back in 2022 twice, and they failed, because I am aware of my rights and I represented myself, and my children don't need to be taken away from me. So today I came on here to talk about the Department of Revenue, because I am on welfare. And if you've ever been on welfare with children, you may know that at least in Massachusetts, I'm not sure if it's the same exact process for every state, but in Massachusetts, when you're on welfare, you have to sign a contract with the Department of Transitional Assistance, or the DTA, whoever gives the welfare benefits. You have to sign a contract and agree to be cooperative with the Department of Revenue, because the Department of Revenue, because you are getting welfare money, they will go after the other parent to pursue child support. So the father of my children, both of my children have the same father. He and I were together up until 2019. And since then, we haven't been together. We remain friends. I try to keep him involved and let his children see him as much as makes sense, I guess, because he is most of the time in active addiction. So it's not always easy to let him have a relationship with them. But as far as I know at this moment, I believe he's homeless. So I haven't talked to him in a couple months at this point. So I don't know what's going on there. But he's a great person. He's a good dad. But, for obvious reasons, can't have him around. And so the Department of Revenue now, for the past year or so, has been coming to me to be able to pursue child support from him. Now, my son is 10, my daughter is 8. When my daughter was born, he was, I'm sorry if this doesn't make sense. You can ask questions in the comments if you need clarification on something, because I kind of have a lot of details and don't want to make this like too long of a live stream to talk about all the details. Just ask me questions if you have them. So when my daughter was born, their father was incarcerated, and he wasn't present to sign her birth certificate. So we have never come across anything in life thus far that has needed us to add him to her birth certificate. We did plan on doing it back then, after he got out of jail, but there was nothing like forcing us to do it or prompting us to do it. And it costs like $75 to amend a birth certificate here. So, we never really had $75 to go spend on something that wasn't affecting anything in our lives thus far. So we just never got around to doing it. Um, and not only that, like I said, he's an addict and he is not always reachable. He's not always around. And things like that are not always top priority, since it literally affects nobody's life, whether his name is on that birth certificate or not. However, now it is affecting things because the Department of Revenue, even though he has never contested to being her father, for some reason, all of a sudden, I've been on welfare on and off for years. Sometimes I'm working, sometimes I'm not. Right now, unfortunately, I've been unemployed for the better part of the past 2 years. So, I'm in a rough spot right now, and they are all of a sudden saying that we need to prove that he's her father because his name is not on the birth certificate. So there's a couple of things wrong with this here. One is, if nobody is contesting to him being her father, why is the DOR questioning it? Why does that matter? He knows that the DOR has a case against him for child support. We've had 3 separate DCF cases that he has been involved in, and he's been in my children's lives for their life, their whole life. So, why, it was good enough for DCF to claim that he was the father and he never contested there, but for the DOR, they need some kind of proof, right? When they're trying to paint him to be the bad guy with DCF, it's okay that he's not on the birth certificate there. And I'm sure that he has even signed paperwork with DCF that he has said, confirmed that he is her father. But that's not good enough for the DOR. So, what they want is a paternity test. And I have an issue with that. Okay. Not because he is not her father, not because there's any question who is her father, which some people have speculated that my children have different fathers. That's not true. And no shade to anybody whose children do have different fathers, but mine don't. Okay. So, I have a problem with that because I am aware of my rights as an American citizen, and I assert my rights at every single point in life where I feel like I need to. When my children were taken away from me in 2018, it was a gross violation of all of our rights, and it should have never happened. There were ways to assess and handle the situation that was going on in 2018 without traumatizing my whole family and removing my 4-year-old and 2-year-old from my custody. So it was a very corrupt situation. It's the main reason why I got involved in activism and politics and why I do what I do now, because I was violated. And from that, I networked and I met and have spoken with many people all over the country who have also been violated in the same way. And you may be surprised to know that 90% of the cases where children are removed from their homes, it's found unwarranted. The children didn't need to be removed to be able to assess whatever problem was in question. So this happens way more often than not. And whole families are traumatized and children are traumatized and abused. And it could all be avoided if Child Protective Services wasn't so invasive and so quick to try to turn parents into villains, right? So after going through what I went through in 2018 and educating myself on my rights and advocating for other parents and helping other parents assert their rights, it's very important to me in every single situation in life to make sure that myself and my family are never violated again. So, um, getting a DNA test, subjecting my daughter to a swab, is a huge deal to me. Now, most people think that that's not a big deal. A cotton swab goes into her mouth, they test her DNA, compare it to the father's, and then, everybody gets the answer that they need, right? But I am in charge of my daughter. I am the one that was given the responsibility from God to protect my daughter. So you will not put any devices. I don't care how simple and non-problematic it seems to anybody. You will not put anything into my daughter's body. You, the government, don't need my child's DNA. Nobody is. If the father was contesting to being her father, I would pay. I would find a way to pay for a private DNA test of some sort. Okay, because that's a completely different story. Okay, he is not contesting. There is no question. There never has been a question ever of whether or not he's her father. So this whole situation is completely ridiculous and just another way to violate me, to hurt me for being poor, right? Because that's what all of this is. Every time family is violated like this, it's always the poor people who have no way to defend themselves, who have no choice but to comply with whatever the government's telling them to do. Because if you don't comply, we're going to take your money away from you. We're going to take your food away from you. We're going to take your home away from you. I have Section 8 too. So, they have me. They have me in a really vulnerable position where they're paying for my family to survive right now. So they will do whatever they want and threaten me and try to back me into a corner and say, if you don't do this, we will sanction your welfare check. We will sanction your food stamps. We will, do whatever we want and threaten you and bully you until you do what we say. So, hold on. I missed the beginning. What are they trying to do now? Can you review? So I basically am still in the beginning of it, Sarah. And I was talking in the beginning too about the fact that I'm streaming live on 6 platforms right now. I usually do 4. I usually do Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm still very new to Rumble, but today I have added Instagram and TikTok. So I have 2 cameras on me today, and I've added 2 more streams. I've never been live on Instagram. I've never been live on TikTok. I'm trying it out now to see how it goes. And so I did give a little brief overview of who I am. And I am going to be posting more consistently. So, the stories will come as time goes on about all the things that I've been through and all the things that I've worked on in the past couple of years. But right now, I'm talking about this specific situation with the Department of Revenue in Massachusetts. Basically, I've been on and off welfare for, a good portion of my children's lives. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I've never had this situation before. This just arose about a year ago, where I've been going back and forth, because when you apply for welfare, when you get approved for welfare, cash benefits, you have to sign an agreement that you will cooperate with the Department of Revenue, the DOR, when they pursue child support from the other parent, right? And so I've signed that letter plenty of times since my daughter was an infant. Pretty much I've been on and off of welfare. So I've signed this letter of cooperation many times. My my kids both have the same father. Him and I were together until 2019. My daughter was born in 2016. My son was born in 2014. And we also lost twins. We were pregnant with twins in 2012 that died shortly after birth. So him and I were through a lot together. We've had 3 pregnancies. We have 2 children. And there is and has never been a question of is he or is he not my daughter's father. But when my daughter was born, he was incarcerated. So when it came time to sign the birth certificate, he was not present. And we never had any need or care to add his name to the birth certificate because it costs $75 to amend a birth certificate in Massachusetts. So it has never up until now affected our lives that his name wasn't on her birth certificate. So it's just something that we were always planning on doing, but we just never got around to it because we don't really ever have $75 to just spend on amending a birth certificate when it's not affecting anything, right? And I definitely don't have $75 right now. That's another thing they could do. They could give me the $75 and we could go amend the birth certificate, maybe. I don't know. And I don't know because of the details that I'm about to get to. So, about a year ago, the DOR contacted me saying that all of a sudden, we need to prove that he is her father because his name is not on the birth certificate. My argument here is, why do we need to do that? Has he contested to being her father? Well, no, we've never heard from him. Okay. So if he's not contesting to being her father, what is it to you? That doesn't make any sense. If he was contesting to be her father, I would gladly go and figure out a way to pay for or he could figure out a way to pay for a private DNA test. I would have no problem doing that if he was questioning it. But this is the government. The government wants me to submit my daughter for a DNA test when they have never even been in contact with this man. Okay. He's hard to find. He's most of the time in active addiction. Okay. And, I love him. He's the father of my children. He's a great guy, but he's in addiction. So I don't have him around my kids when he's in addiction. Okay. And as far as I know right now, he's homeless. So I haven't heard from him in a couple months, like 2 months. And the DOR, as far as I know, has never heard from him. So if he's not contesting to being her father, what do you need a DNA test for? It doesn't make any sense. And you want me to submit my daughter for a DNA swab when you can't even get a hold of this man to get his DNA swab. So, that's another problem right there. If you're going to tell me that my daughter needs to take a DNA swab, get his first. Because if you don't have his, then there was no point in taking my daughter's. And I pretty much guarantee that you're never going to get his because he's unreachable. And even if you reach him, that doesn't mean that he's going to show up for an appointment. I don't know what else to tell you. They're hard to find, they're hard to reach. And so anyway, so they've been back and forth with me for about a year now. They did actually cut my money last year. It was for a different reason though. They said that I didn't sign the paper that said that I cooperate. So that was like ridiculous. So anyway, so somebody from the Department of Revenue calls me the day before yesterday and leaves me a voicemail saying that I am not cooperating with them, that I have court next week. I have a virtual hearing next week. And I need to do what I need to do or my money is going to be sanctioned. Right. And the message even is threatening. And I actually kind of wish that I wasn't using my phone to be live on TikTok because then I could play the message. But yeah, very threatening, very like bully, like with the Department of Revenue saying that I need to do this DNA test. I have court next week because um, I'm not cooperating with the Department of Revenue. I was just opening up the email. So she called me and I missed the call. She left me a voicemail and then she also sent me an email. Her email doesn't even have the correct information. So the email says, Miss Itali, as you are aware, the matter with Mr. Gibson is scheduled for a conference this coming, gonna leave the date out of there, when reviewing your case. It appears you continue to receive cash benefits for your daughter, which means the department will not dismiss your complaint. The department has made numerous attempts to have you complete a mother's affidavit to no avail. Therefore, you have failed to cooperate with the process. We will be continuing matter as the attorney will not dismiss the complaint as the child remains active on public assistance. Thank you. And that is from Nareda Cruz. Now, I was very confused when I got the voicemail and this email because what are you talking about? I didn't sign a mother's affidavit. Like, what even is that? Like, I'm pretty sure that I did. Like, that's the paper that you sign when you agree to cooperate. And when you say, like, this is the father, and I will cooperate when you pursue him for child support. I did all that. So, what are you talking about? So, I call her, and she's like, oh, I had the information wrong. I meant to change it. It's not the mother's affidavit that we need from you. So, first of all, like, figure out the story before you come to bully me. Okay. Is that they go after him for child support. But my problem is that nobody has ever contested to him being the father. He is not denying being her father. There's never been a question of whether or not he's her father. So why is the DOR questioning it? He did sign the birth certificate for my son because he was present when my son was born. The only reason he did not sign the birth certificate for my daughter is because he was in jail when she was born. And because it costs $75 to amend a birth certificate. And we've never had that. We never got around to doing that. So I don't I don't care what their reasoning is. The point is that they prey on poor people. They prey on vulnerable people. Because if you need something, if you need welfare, if you need food stamps, if you need Section 8, then they will make you do whatever it is that they want you to do. And if you don't, they will retaliate and they will sanction and they will come for your throat because you're poor and you're vulnerable and you're easy to attack. The government is a bully. And I mean, the DOR, is it even the government? They're not elected. I don't even understand. It's like an NGO. I don't even know. So the point is, they come for the vulnerable, right? It's just like DCF. And I was talking about that a little bit earlier too. There's many conversations to have about DCF and Child Protective Services, but I was violated by them. They took my children once. They tried to take them 2 more times. And the only reason why they didn't get them the other 2 times is because I was aware of my rights. If more parents were aware of their rights, they would not be taking children out of families the way that they do. So anybody who has an opinion that Child Protective Services is a good thing and they're here to save children from abusive parents and abusive families and neglectful families, you're wrong. That's not what they're doing. They sell you an idea of something that sounds great, but that's not how they actually operate. Okay. It's a very corrupt child trafficking industry. That's what Child Protective Services is. And the DOR is no better. No, none of these agencies are about anything but money. Okay. If we have learned anything from the last 4 years, we have to understand that anytime the government or somebody purporting to the government or a branch of the government, which most NGOs are not a part of the government, they just act like they are. They are mobsters, they are the mafia, they are bullies, and they every time they tell us that they're doing something for our best interests or our safety or our health, it's a lie. Yeah. 99.9% of the time, it's a lie. They don't do anything for our benefit. They don't do anything for our protection. They don't do anything for our safety. They don't do anything for our health. This is about money. It's always about money. It's always about money and control and profit. Okay. So if they can't get any money out of you, they will exploit you and abuse you until they figure out a way that they can make a profit off of you. Okay. So they prey on vulnerable people, vulnerable families. They take children away. They take welfare away if you don't do what they say. They are bullies. They are the mafia. Okay. We are being run by the mafia, essentially. I think it's required to comply if you are receiving benefits from the state. Yes, it is. Not a DNA test. It's required that you cooperate with the DOR for them to pursue child support from the other parent. But in my case, I have already agreed to cooperate. The problem is that a DNA test is not necessary here. For one, because nobody is contesting to him being her father. For two, because there are other avenues. He could go before a judge and say under oath that he's her father, and that should be good enough. He could sign a piece of paper. So this is where we were last year. Last year I said, is there any way that he can write an affidavit or, appear in court or something and swear to being her father? Will that work? Because my problem is, you are not putting a swab. You are not taking my daughter's DNA. Okay. And that's not because there is any question to who her father is. That's because that is a violation of my daughter's bodily autonomy, and you're not doing it. Okay. Just like you're not going to jab her. You're not going to do anything to her or anybody in my family or me. Okay. You don't need my daughter's DNA. There are other ways to go about doing this. And I don't know what else could or would be done with that DNA swab that you take from her. Okay. You don't need it. You're not getting it. So, and that's how you need to be to assert your rights and to make sure that you're not violated. It doesn't matter how small of a deal it seems to be to you, just like putting on a mask in a grocery store. Okay. They needed to go shopping because they didn't want to deal with confrontation. Okay, I never wore a mask in a grocery store, and I had the cops called on me so many times, but I've never been kicked out of a grocery store. You know that? Okay, and I've never been arrested for not wearing a mask because it wasn't a law. Because we have the right to do what we want to do with our own bodies, and they cannot govern our bodies. Okay, so it's the same thing. So many people saw it as not a big deal to put on a mask to go grocery shopping. But it's a huge deal because every time you're silent and every time you don't stand your ground and assert your rights, you are in tacit agreement with however you are being violated. You are saying, I agree with this. I'm okay with this. I'm going to cooperate, and I'm not going to push back because this is okay with me. It's okay for you to force me to do something against my will, even though I know that I have the right to not do whatever you're trying to make me do. That's the problem, is that people don't have balls. People have been programmed to think that we just need to bow down and respect authority. And people who just act like they have authority over us when they don't. The only authority over me is God, Jesus Christ. So, that's the only being that I answer to. So I will not do something because somebody in a uniform or somebody with a badge tells me that I need to do it. That's not how this works here. We were born here. We have God-given rights here. Okay. So if we don't assert them, we lose them. That's how that works. That's how you become a communist country. That's how you become a slave in a dictatorship, is by not asserting your rights and by not protecting your rights. The only way to protect your rights is to assert them. Okay, so you want to put on a mask in a grocery store, you're doing a disservice to all of us. Just like if you want to submit your child to be violated by them taking their DNA, you're doing a disservice to all of us. You need to stand your ground. You need to protect your children. You need to protect yourself. And in doing that, you protect the rights for everybody. Okay, no matter how insignificant it seems to you, no matter how small a deal it seems to you, every violation, every time they go against our will, every time they choose to do something that we didn't choose to do, we need to stand our ground. So I don't care if you think that it's not a big deal to take a cotton swab and grab my daughter's DNA. It's a big deal to me. So nobody will be taking my daughter's DNA. And so I did cooperate with them. I got on the phone with their attorney. I said, how else can I cooperate so that you do not have to take a swab of my daughter's DNA? And they said that that he could fill out a form saying, you know, a form confirming that he's her father. The only problem with that was that the form needs to be notarized. So he doesn't have an ID. Okay. When I say that I've tried to get him an ID and to help him get an ID, I have fucking tried. Okay. Like I said, my kid's father is an addict. As far as I know right now, he's homeless. And that is not to throw shade on him. That is not to shame him or anybody else. I've been homeless myself. I've lived in homeless shelters with my kids. And I had many people addicted to drugs in my life. Okay. There is no shame and no shade on anybody that is in a situation. Okay. I've never done drugs myself, but I don't have anything against people who do. Okay, that's just what my situation is, and that's why I talk about it. It is not to shame him or throw shade at him or anybody in that situation. But he's an addict. He's homeless. I can't find him. I haven't heard from him in 2 months. And even when he is findable, which a year ago he was, I plenty of seeing him and talking to him and all of that. However, I wasn't able to get to the point where we were able to get an ID for him. So, he doesn't have an ID. If he doesn't have an ID, how does he go before a judge and swear under oath when there's no identification? I don't know. He can't get a piece of paper notarized without an ID. So I don't know what else to do here. I don't think that I should be subject to having my daughter's DNA taken when, one, they don't have his DNA. So even if I were going to go through with the DNA thing, get his first. Because if you take hers and you don't get his and you have nothing to test it with or compare it to, then you took hers for no reason. You can't nail him down just like I can't nail him down. So get his DNA first and then come for my daughter's, right? Don't punish me when you haven't even been able to nail him down yet. And, or like, help me. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. So anyway, so this woman leaves me a voicemail and an email, very like threatening and bully like, telling me that I need to, I have court next week, virtual court, and, I need to cooperate or my money's going to get cut. Right. So I'm on the phone with her. Her name is Narita Cruz. She's a child support specialist for the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. I'm on the phone with her, very rude, very condescending, very, just how people speak to people when they think that they have authority over them. It's disgusting. Because I'm poor, because I'm on welfare, because I'm less than her, right? So, because she basically can affect my income, right? So that's how she's talking to me. And she tells me, that I need to do all this. I have the back and forth with her about this is crazy. I would have him, testify before a judge or sign a piece of paper, but he doesn't have an ID. Like I've been trying to get his ID for like well over a year, and he doesn't have one because he's never in one place. He doesn't have a place to live, nowhere to send it to. If it gets sent, it goes missing. Like I don't know, but he doesn't have an ID. So and like God forbid I have his mail sent here and then DCF tries to come around again and tell me that he's living with me again, like they did 2 years ago when he wasn't living with me. So it's impossible to nail him down. But anyway, so I'm having the back and forth with her, and she says to me, well, how long were you two together? And I'm like, why do you need to ask that? Why can poor people who are in temporary situations needing of assistance not be allowed any privacy? I understand that beggars can't be choosers. You need to do certain things to be able to get government assistance. If you don't want to comply with their rules, don't be on government assistance. All of that, sure. But when do you ever stop and think of the exploitation and the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the way that they abuse poor people, okay? The way that they abuse vulnerable families and vulnerable children. Like, are you not allowed to have dignity because you're poor? Are you not allowed to have privacy because you're poor and needing of assistance? Is this why government assistance programs were created? To be able to logically, justifiably invade in the privacy of poor people? Is that why we have these programs? And it's just so custom now and so accepted by people that nobody even bats an eye when they're giving all of their information over to the welfare people or the DOR people, because it's like, you want your money, you got to give us all your information, you got to have no privacy, no life, and all of that. I got a call from the DTA about my case like a month or so ago, asking me if my children are immunized. And when I said no, the next question was, why not? Like, I shouldn't have to tell you that. I should be able to have my own reasons why I don't jab my kids. And that should be none of your business. Just like schooling. If I homeschool my kids, I shouldn't have to report to the school district that I don't want to be a part of and get their permission to homeschool my children. I shouldn't have to report to them at the beginning of and end of every year to let them know what's going on with my children. I don't approve of the school district, and that's why my kids are not involved. So why do I need their approval to homeschool my kids? It doesn't make any sense. So she asked me how long we were together. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why do you need to know that? And then she says, because I represent the child in their best interest. And I said, excuse me? And she said, I represent the child in the best interest of the child. And I was like, no, you represent the DOR. She repeated herself again. I represent the child. No, ma'am. You represent the DOR. I represent the child. It's my child. And the fact that this woman had the nerve to repeatedly tell me that she represents my child should be the biggest red flag in this situation, because this is genuine. Like, this woman genuinely thinks that she represents my child. these people think that they have authority over our lives. And I mean, depending on which way you look at it, because this is my only source of income right now, they do have authority over my life. If I decide that I need this money so bad that I have to comply with them, you know? But she genuinely thinks that she represents my child and my child's best interests. The child support specialist from the Department of Revenue thinks that she represents my child. Like, this is disgusting. Okay. And again, her name is Nereida Cruz, Nereida Cruz, from the Department of Revenue. She's a child support specialist. Figured how to file a formal complaint against this woman, because not only do you get sent to a call center when you try to call the Department of Revenue, nobody knows like what the process is for filing a formal complaint. And that's what I'd like to do, as the first step here, because I don't know who told this woman that she was a representative of my child or anybody else's child, but somebody should know that that's what she thinks. She thinks that she's there for children and that she's there to represent children and their best interests, a child that she's never met in her life. Like, honestly, like go fuck yourself, lady. Good point. If they don't have the father's DNA on record, where are they comparing your daughter's DNA to? Right. So, yeah, so that's basically what happened. I have court next week. Who knows what that entails? I have no idea. They're going to try to get a judge ruling for me to comply. And that's what happens in these situations. This is what happens in Child Protective Services or DCF situations. And in all situations, when it comes to families, poor people, and the way that they try to take advantage of people and the way that they try to prey on vulnerable people is they come at your neck, and force you with their mean words and their big words and their confusing words, and try to force you into complying with whatever it is that they want you to do. And if you don't do it, then they go to court to get a judge's order for you to do it. And the part where we as a people mess up every single time is that we let them bully us and we just comply before going to court. I don't know what's going to happen in court. I do know, though, that when DCF tried to take my kids twice 2 years ago before we went to court, if I were not aware of my rights and had not already gone through that situation, I probably would have handed over my kids, because they tell you that you have to. The truth is that you don't. Not until a judge says it, Someone needs to do it. You aren't. Someone needs to do what? I'm not what? Yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here, but I wanted to talk about that. I was so disgusted. And so, not really surprised, because I don't even think that there's anything surprising any government agency at this point, or somebody who thinks that they have some type of authority over us, that they don't. These things don't surprise me anymore, but it's very important to talk about it. It's very important to raise public awareness to things like this, because these are people who are being paid by taxpayers. They're in these jobs to collect money for the government and giving us false information, lying to us, and bullying us into submission. That's what's happening. So much more than we could ever even understand that it's happening. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I will see. And then you have people like this. people who literally devote time into also shaming people for being on welfare because they don't agree with their like political stances and shit. So yeah, I mean, I'll update after the court or whatever. Like I said, I'm going to be posting more consistently. I am going to be posting on more platforms and going to be talking about the many things that I'm working on and that I am involved in. And I do work. I do plenty of work, actually. Um, the difference between me and you is that my work is actually meaningful. And because I do something that means something, unfortunately, right now, it doesn't come with a paycheck. So maybe at some point it will. But right now, I do a lot of work just because I feel like that's the right thing to do. And I am not going to stop doing the right thing and go do something meaningless just for a paycheck. If that's not what I feel compelled to do at the moment. So it would be great to be off of welfare, and it would be great to work. I have worked my whole life. This is the first time I've been unemployed for about 2 years, and it's the first time in my life that I've been unemployed, especially for this long. And I do honestly hate not having a paycheck, and I hate not having, like a tasks to perform. Like a job would entail. And I did love the jobs that I had. I was a manager at Dunkin' Donuts, but right now that's not what I feel like I'm being called to do at the moment. So it's just not in the cards for me right now. But yeah, so I think I'm done here. I've been on here for longer than I wanted to be. And I'm gonna get off and hopefully, I mean, there's a lot of viewers. The viewership does not represent itself in the comments. So I wish more people would engage in the conversation. But thank you for watching anyway. And maybe I'll be back tomorrow or next week. I don't know yet, but I will be back and I will be more consistent with the posting. And thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging. If you want to follow what I do, my Facebook is Catherine Vitale. My YouTube is People's Press Media. Twitter, Vitale for Boston. Instagram, Vitale617. Rumble, People's Press Media. TikTok, Catherine Vitale. I'm also with the Blexit, Massachusetts chapter, and I'm with Boston for Trump. And where else am I? I have a website, boston2boston.com. That's Boston, T-O, Boston.com. There's not much content on there because I do most of this myself, and I am not a web designer or an experienced content creator. So I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get better at it. No, I didn't quit smoking. I still smoke. Hopefully quitting is in the near future for me, but not yet. But yeah, so I'll see you guys either tomorrow or maybe Monday. I don't know. I'll talk to you soon. Go follow me on my platforms. And I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.